Joined on the line now by Executive Director at Basketball Alberta and host of the Basketball Hour here on TSN, Mr. Paul Sir. Paul, how are you tonight?
I'm well, Dean. Good to talk to you.
Yes, it is great to chat with you once again, and it's great when we can chat about a 10-game win streak for the Toronto Raptors. They beat the New York Knicks tonight, extending that streak to 10, and this is the best basketball I can remember this team playing in a long time.
They're really a fun team to watch, and they're playing extremely well, obviously. 10 wins in a row, Dean. The all-star play, the level of play of DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, I think even in the heady days of McGrady and Vince Carter with Chris Bosh in the wonderful years he had, we've never seen two players on the Toronto Raptors play to this level. That Kyle Lowry being voted in as a starter for the All-Star game is great. DeRozan should have been a starter, but wasn't, but still was named today to the All-Star team. And I think we're just seeing the best basketball, as you said, Dean, that we've seen in Toronto in a long, long time.
Lowry, 26 points tonight, 10 assists, and with a bad wrist, of all things, DeRozan, 26 points, and Jonas Valanciunas, 18 rebounds tonight. Like, they had everybody excelling, and including getting double digits off the bench from Patterson and Joseph.
They're hitting on all cylinders, no doubt about it. It's fun to watch a team when they're really in their zone, isn't it? And the Raptors are truly in their zone. They're all playing with confidence. I think the defining characteristic, if I could point to one thing that makes the Raptors different this year, is the way they share the ball. And it's sort of a subcategory to that is when DeMar DeRozan and when Kyle Lowry decide to take the ball, they're to the basket. They're under control. And they're finishing with great efficiency. In years past, it looked like they were forcing a lot of the time. They're not forcing anymore. And they're just playing at a level where they just seem to see the court so much better, and they seem to be able to control their defender with ease. So we are seeing special basketball being played right now.
What the bench contribution from the Toronto Raptors, that's what, the start, Lowry and DeRozan and Valanciunas, the starters are impressive, but Corey Joseph, this guy is so versatile. He can do almost anything for you. He really can, Dean, and I think his impact on the team. I thought Damari Carroll was going to be the biggest impact player on the team, and he may have been if he was able to stay healthy. But it really is in terms of new acquisitions. It really is Corey Joseph. And everything I've heard about Corey is that he's such a great teammate. Obviously, he can play. He has skills, but he's completely unselfish. He's a great locker room guy, and the players on the team have complete confidence in him. He really seems to have that kind of infectious enthusiasm and leadership that's really hard to put a point total on or an assist total on. But instead, it's the way he gets the whole team involved and engaged, and he's willing to do anything on the court to help the team win. And he defers not because he's not because he's trying to make sure that DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry get their shots, but he defers to them. But then on the other hand, he's not afraid to take it to the basket when he needs to, and he's always looking for the other teammates to get them involved as well. He really has been a catalyst. We're speaking with Paul Sir, the Executive Director of Basketball Alberta. The Toronto Raptors win 103-93 over the New York Knicks tonight, winning their 10th straight game. And you mentioned it earlier, DeMar DeRozan named to the All-Star team. It's great to have two Raptors in Toronto in the All-Star game, one a starter in a couple of weeks in Toronto. It's going to be a big event for the city, and it would have been a shame not to have any Toronto representative. And Kyle Lowry got voted in, but as you mentioned, DeMar DeRozan, he deserved to be there as well.
Really did, and to have two, as you said, Dean, on the All-Star team is very special, with Toronto being the host city, the first time the All-Star game has ever been hosted outside of the United States. I'm going to just do a quick sidestep here to an NBA All-Star related event. Last Thursday through Sunday, the NBA was in town doing a series of promotional events in Edmonton to bring awareness up in the communities of the All-Star Game. And it was very interactive, and they had events at three YMCAs, and then a big event where they duplicated the All-Star Skills competitions down at Grant MacEwan University on Saturday afternoon. And Dean, once again, Edmonton did something that nobody else in Canada can even touch. The attendance at these events far exceeded what the attendance was in any other center around the country.
Wow.
And I mean by a long shot. Just as an example, Calgary, they have the three-point competition. Calgary had 119 entrants. The NBA, when they came to Edmonton, said, boy, I hope you can come close, because I believe the other city, the most another city had was like 40. Edmonton had 165 people in the three-point competition.
Holy man.
This town just finds a way to do special things, and the attendance figures at the YMCA's blew everything else across the country just off the map. So there's obviously NBA fever in Edmonton.
Oh, no kidding. That is incredible, as we're speaking with Paul Sir from Basketball Alberta. I remember Mark Majot telling me how packed it was down there, and that's an excellent story for the Edmonton area. The Raptors, they win again tonight, 10 straight. They have a good team. They're rolling. Could it be better? Do they need to make any moves as we approach the second half of the season? Or are you confident with the lineup that they have and Damari Carroll returning at some point that they'll be able to get it done?
It would be real hard, I think, for the GM Ujiri to make a move now. I think there was an uneasiness last year when we were at this point, and there were a lot of people in the community that felt that there were a couple of pieces in the Raptors puzzle at that time that maybe were replaceable and maybe should be replaced. But Ujiri stuck with that group, even though they as you recall, Dean, they started incredibly hot, like red hot out of the gate. But then over the course of the season, their play steadily declined, and then they fizzled out completely against the Washington Wizards in the first round of the playoffs. There isn't that same feeling this year. I think people felt that maybe they wouldn't start as quickly as the previous season, which they didn't, but that over the course of the season, the makeup of the personnel and the kind of character that this team had, that this could be a better team that had a chance to win a playoff series or two. And the way they're playing right now, and the way that, with the upset and the upheaval in the Cleveland Cavaliers organization, who knows? This is a team that's very intriguing. So I really don't see the need for a move, and I have a hard time thinking who they could move that would not upset the chemistry and that rare locker room unity that they really seem to have right now.
Yeah, sometimes it's better just to leave it alone and let the players do it. As if you have a good locker room, why, as they say, upset the apple cart?
Absolutely, and Coach Casey with this group has really, I think, consolidated his influence over this team. All 10 of their victories, they've held their opponent under 100 points. They've really bought into Casey's defensive strategy and are playing great team defense. The team's unselfish. You can see that they're, bubbling over with confidence right now. Be really difficult to mess, like you said. Don't upset the apple cart. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's just let it ride out right now because they've got a real good thing going.
This win streak is even more impressive because a guy like Carroll is out, and the team has won 21 straight games when holding their opponents to less than 100 points. And defense was a problem for this team last year, and that's one of the reasons they brought Damari Carroll in, and they're doing it without him.
That's surprising, isn't it? Because it was Damari Carroll who was going to anchor this defense, lead the way on the defensive end, take the toughest wing player or guard for his defensive assignment, and yet now we're seeing DeMar DeRozan, who's never been known as a great defender, and I still don't think he's an elite defender, but he's become a real effective team defender on a team that's really bought in once again to the whole defensive strategy that Coach Casey has been working at and preaching for a number of years. So I don't know how you would tinker with this and have them perform any better. I think you've got to let this run and keep waiting for Carroll to come back. That'll strengthen them even more because he's an unselfish player as well as a great defender. So things right now look great for the Toronto Raptors.
One other NBA story from tonight that I want to ask you about. Ryan Anderson of the New Orleans Pelicans had 30 points in the first half, the most by any player this year. As a coach, do you just keep feeding him the ball as much as you can when the guy is hot like that in the first half?
Absolutely. You keep going to him until the defense figures it out, or the defense adjusts so much that it gives easy opportunities to your teammates. So I think he ended up with 36, if I'm not mistaken. And, he had one of those special halves that you have once in a while, that a player has once in a while, and many players have just once in their career. But he had a great half. And like I said, I didn't see the game, so I can't comment as to whether he was getting the ball in the second half or if the defense was just keying on him. But you have to keep going to the well until it dries up. Yeah,
and it obviously did dry up, but they get the win, 114-105 over the Sacramento Kings. And DeMarcus Cousins had a huge game the other day, so maybe it's just contagious. I'm not sure about that. One thing that's not a good story, and that's the Blake Griffin punch heard around the world. And this is just an ugly incident for the entire NBA. Is this enough of an ugly incident for the Clippers to consider moving Blake Griffin because of this situation, or do you think this, in time, will blow over within the organization? Because this can't be good for team morale.
I doubt that it is on a flaky team at the best of times, but I remember Charles Barkley talking once, and as only Barkley can, about how people don't know. You see the public persona of players in the NBA, but you don't know who they are. Blake Griffin has been able, I think, to craft an image of himself as a very likable guy. He does some funny commercials, but then he punches a manager. Are you kidding me? Like, I would say that's more than enough reason to look at him and say, I just don't think we can build our franchise around this guy anymore. And I don't know the circumstances and what the full story is about this. Around this, but how in the world does a player of Blake Griffin's stature put himself in that position? So that shows to me a character flaw and a character weakness, and you're not going to build a championship team around a player with that kind of character. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers didn't make a move at some point, and maybe not right away, maybe not even this year, but you got to look at your future and really question it with a player like that.
Paul Sir, the Executive Director of Basketball Alberta, is our guest tonight. We talked about the Raptors' 10-game winning streak and a few other NBA stories. Let's move on to Canadian basketball and a tough draw for the last-chance Olympic qualifier for Team Canada. Turkey and France. France is ranked 5th in the world. The host Philippines, Senegal, and New Zealand. But they're going to have to, and they play Turkey right off the bat, and then Senegal. So they've got some tough matches in the first round and a really tough draw, isn't it?
This is what I would call the nightmare scenario for Team Canada, and it starts with how many of the best players are going to play for Canada. It's relatively close to the end of the NBA season, and some of the better players that are Canadian aren't going to be going deep into the playoffs, like Andrew Wiggins isn't going to be going deep into the playoffs. But the Minnesota Timberwolves going to let Wiggins play not just in the qualifier, but if they were fortunate enough to qualify, Dean, then to play in the Olympics. That's a lot of basketball in the off season, and the NBA thinks like a business. So I think can Rowan Barrett and Steve Nash get the players to want to play for Canada? That's number one. Number two, as you point out, Turkey right off the bat. Turkey's very good. France is very good. Senegal, the Philippines, they're no joke either. I mean, Canada is not a clear-cut favorite under any circumstances in this. So for them to qualify for Brazil, they would have to get all or most of their players, and they would have to play with a different level of maturity than they showed last year in Mexico when they lost to a very beatable Venezuela team.
The problem with Team Canada is guys might not, it's right in the middle of free agency period, and there's guys that won't have contracts. They might not want to play with uninsured contracts. And then there's a guy like Jamal Murray who won't have a contract probably by then. And does he want to play with an uninsured situation? That's what I see as the biggest problem for Team Canada in recruiting.
You know how times have changed, because in days gone by, players would clamor from any country to have the honor of playing for their country. But you point out correctly, Dean, that this is a business, and players, their product is their body and their health, and their ability to garner large sums of money for their skills and services. So someone like Murray, who for everything I've seen is a very loyal Canadian, would love to play and contribute to Team Canada, but he may be in a position, as you correctly point out, where he just can't because of what he's going to be trying to negotiate to get into the NBA. So I think the unsettled nature of this draw, it really, really does not set the table well for Team Canada. Not to discount them entirely, because there's a lot of talent on that team, but they haven't demonstrated to this point that they're ready to make that breakthrough step on the world stage in the FIBA game and be able to close the deal, so to speak, in order to qualify for the Olympics.
Paul Sir, the Executive Director of Basketball Alberta, joining us. One final one for you. You guys have a pretty big event going on this Sunday.
We do, Dean, and I'm really pleased that you're going to let people know about this. We have our provincial team program where young players at the U14, 15, 16, and 17 age groups in both genders have the opportunity to play for what we call Team Alberta and represent their province and have experiences over the summer, culminating with the Canada Basketball National Championships for the under 15 and under 17 age groups. So this weekend at Lindsay Thurber High School in Red Deer, we're holding an open tryout for all of our teams, again, of both genders. Last year, we had about 200 athletes try out for all 8 teams. As of tonight, we have almost 350 athletes from across the province that are going to congregate in Red Deer. So it's going to be highly competitive. It's going to be intense. Kids, I respect the kids that are coming so much, Dean, because they're laying it on the line. They're putting themselves out there. We have a lot of kids, players from outlying communities that are going to come and experience and challenge themselves against the best players in the province. We have an absolutely phenomenal coaching staff at every age group. Just to give you an example, I'll just mention our under 17 teams. Our under 17 girls team is coached by Dave Oldham, who's the head coach at MacEwan University. And Dave is one of the real fine young coaches in Canada. And he's got a great staff built around him as well. Our head men's coach is Clayton Pottinger, the great player for the University of Alberta Golden Bears, won 2 national championships under Coach Don Horwood, has taken his Red Deer College team to the National College Finals, finishing in one of the most exciting games ever in college history in Canada. They finished second 2 years ago, and Clay was the National Coach of the Year. Every one of our provincial teams has top-level coaches, very dedicated, and these kids are going to get challenged. They're going to have opportunities over the summer to grow, better their games. We've got Canada Basketball heavily involved with them, teaching these kids the Canadian style of play. Very dynamic weekend coming up. Great opportunities as we see basketball flourishing in Alberta.
And what's coming up on the Basketball Hour this weekend?
Basketball Hour this weekend, we have Coach Ray Felice from Archbishop O'Leary High School. This upcoming week, the weekend after this, they have their annual tournament. And then we have his top player who is on the radar for Canada Basketball for their national team program. Adong Majai is going to be with us as well. We also have Robbie Valpreda, who's the women's coach at Concordia University, was a great player at both Grant MacEwan and at the U of A. And then we also have ex-NBA player Dan Dickow joining us too. And we're going to talk about David Blatz firing from the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to talk about the Toronto Raptors. And we're going to talk about the San Antonio shellacking by the Golden State Warriors. and see if we can read much into that at this juncture in the season. So it should be a really good show.
Yeah, sounds like a loaded one for sure. Paul, thanks very much for joining us here tonight on Sports Night, and have yourself a great weekend.
You as well, Dean. Thank you so much.